This is a Stories to be Told podcast. Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. In 1960, British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, 1st Earl of Stockton, gave a speech that was eventually to become one of the defining moments of his career. This speech was so significant that he gave it on 2 separate occasions in 2 different countries. Within this speech, he asked a question that he already knew the answer to. It was a speech that embodied the recognition of Britain's waning presence as an imperial global power and an acknowledgement of its future role as a sovereign figurehead of state. Macmillan's speech today is more commonly known as the Wind of Change, and he made this speech during a tour of the then British colonies across Africa. He was the first British Prime Minister to tour the African continent, giving his speech first in Accra, Ghana on the 10th of January and then on the 3rd of February to the South African Parliament. The only thing that was different on each occasion was the response of its audience. I featured the Wind of Change speech in 2 of my previous podcast episodes, both of which feature in Season 1. However, one of them stands out as the most popular. Wind of Change Expanded, where I give my own analysis and perspectives about this speech and place it within the wider context of the catalyst of global events occurring after World War II. In 1960, the Wind of Change was the wave of national consciousness across British and European colonies that became a resounding voice, demanding self-rule and repatriation. However, it also presented a crossroads, a choice of ideology that each newly independent state would have to make. Democracy or communism? Macmillan's speech signified a position that Britain had never been in for the past 400 years, having the ability to instigate change while being powerless in directing its course or outcomes. The Wind of Change became a metaphor to describe a phenomenon that would shape the world for a new age, the post-colonial era. Almost 60 years later, at the start of 2020, the world is experiencing another wind of change, that of the COVID pandemic. As before in 1960, it presents a crossroad where we are all questioning the validity of the ideology that we have espoused to all our lives. We are challenging norms and the status quo and questioning what values are important to us. Repressed prejudices and phobias, as well as talents and aspirations, have risen to the surface, and many of us have reevaluated our priorities in order to give ourselves the quality of life that we desire and feel we deserve. We have good intentions to sustain newly formed positive habits, but whether we can maintain them will be determined by what will be the new norm, and whether we each can define for ourselves what the new norm will be. But there is no progress and change without struggle, and many have been thrown into a crucible of crisis and trauma where our norms can no longer be ignored, as there isn't the cushion of work, school and socialising to protect us from harsh realities of what was once hidden within our personal and home lives. This wind of change has revealed many hidden agendas, both good and bad. It has exposed the weaknesses in our disposition and in our relationships, as well as the strengths that we all share in nurturing our connections and reconnecting with one another. We rediscovered the hidden gold mines of cleaner air and the sounds of nature, and what we took for granted we finally took notice of and swore an oath that we would do better. Never before has the world been brought so closely together, and we can almost feel our interconnectedness, not just through social media, but also through meeting platforms such as Zoom. Within this virtual proximity, we all learnt to adapt, and it is no longer invention that is the mother of necessity, but innovation, as what is tangible becomes more worthless and transient, while the virtual and the digital increase in value. The wind is such an appropriate metaphor for change. It is a force that is ever present, but is only seen through what it acts upon and manifests through, seeing only the impact, the effects, and the consequences. As we stood still, our normal distractions were removed, and we all saw that which had always been hidden in plain sight: the inequalities and injustices of our human existence. As we put on physical face masks, we tore off our metaphorical ones, and we braved the uncertain and the unknown. To march, protest, tear down statues, rename monuments, and spoke with our collective primal instinct: I can't breathe. Just as Macmillan feared the threat of communism towards Britain's colonies, governments today fear the wind of the pandemic and its potentially devastating effects to our economy, our well-being, values, and our way of life. We are entering a new era, and the parallels are clear. As South Africa became a republic in 1961, Barbados becomes the same in 2021. Again, 60 years later. Just as Macmillan was criticised by conservatists who questioned the legitimacy of decolonisation and its impact on imperial interests, we see the rise of a new colonialism fighting not for real estate and rare earth minerals, but for something much more precious: the right to occupy and harness our spiritual potential and mental capacity. It is a fight for morality. Are Russia, China, and the Middle East just physical manifestations of this struggle? Our destiny will not be determined by complaining or waiting for the wind to change direction, but it will be determined by the way we set our sails, and that will determine the direction that we take. The wind of change brings another wave of nationalism that is testing every nation on earth. The anti and pro-lockdowners, the pro and anti-vaccinators, the haves and the have-nots, mounting national debt, higher living costs, and increasing mental health issues are all working together to expose each country's great divide, with the great shift of wealth becoming the underlying narrative. It is no longer enough to simply believe in the idea of liberty and democracy. The time will soon arrive when each and every one of us will have to ask ourselves not, what do I believe in, but what am I prepared to stand for? The wind of change is blowing for a second time, putting on trial our way of life, but its purpose has always been the same: a struggle for the minds of men. Open your eyes and see. Then choose. If you liked this podcast, then stay on this listening platform or my website and check out my other podcasts in relation to this one, such as my episode A Call to Action, Macmillan's Wind of Change speech, and my most popular podcast episode, Wind of Change Expanded. Also, The Story So Far Part 2, where I share some anecdotes and a reading from my 4th published poetic narrative, Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change, which tells of the significance of this speech and its implications for Britain. My other publications, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, and Knights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, are all available at storiestobetold.com and on Amazon. And why not sign up for some free samples and join our mailing list, where this year I will be pushing forward with my emails and sharing exclusive content with those of you who have signed up. Well, it's a brand new year. Happy 2022 to all my listeners, and I hope that this year enables you all to continue to strive for the things that you desire and deserve, to hold on to those whom you love, and most of all, to stay safe, well, and blessed. Don't forget to like and follow us on social media, and thank you so much for continuing to support these podcasts. Please comment and share using the hashtag #STBpodcasts. And as always, it is a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. Thanks so much for listening again, and I'll see you on the next page.